Do you know what this is? You may recognize it, and if you said wax cylinder, then you would be correct. But you'd also be incorrect. Let me explain. When you're creating an escape room, there's more to it than just writing puzzles. You also have to figure out how you're going to get information into people's hands, or heads, or ears, or eyes, or however you choose to do it. And also, does it make sense to the story, and the theme, and the time period? There's a lot to consider how you're going to get that information to people. Recently, we were tasked with improving a pre-existing room, and it was going to be turned into a Frankenstein-themed room. So we were trying to figure out a way to get information to the players that wasn't a journal or pieces of paper, something a little more interactive and more interesting. And so we went with the movie era of Frankenstein, not the book era, which places it in the early 1900s. And in the early 1900s, what existed was phonographs. So we decided we would use audio clues. And what do you play in a phonograph? That's right, wax cylinders. The wax cylinder is the precursor to the vinyl record, and they work very much the same way. They have a bunch of grooves on them, and when a needle hits them, it interprets those grooves into audio, and it plays through an amplification system. Now, these were very popular at the turn of the 20th century, early 1900s, but they could only hold about 2 minutes of audio, and eventually about 4 minutes of audio. And obviously, vinyl records overtook them and became the more dominant media of the time, so you can kind of think about these as the Betamax to the VHS. And if you got that reference, congratulations, you're old. This is a wax cylinder from the early 1900s. This is the original packaging, and this is what it looks like. Now, this is a little bit later in the timeline of wax cylinders. This is something called blue amberol. And it's a little different than early wax cylinders because it has a coating of celluloid, it's got plaster inside of it, and it can play for up to 4 minutes. As I said earlier, original wax cylinders only had about 2 minutes of playtime on them. These are also able to be played more. Original wax cylinders had a lifespan that eventually you just couldn't play them anymore. And I don't know if this one does have a lifespan, but apparently it lasts much longer. But obviously you can't put a real wax cylinder into an escape room because, well, you can't record onto it. It's already got its recording or song or whatever is on there, and they just wouldn't hold up to the abuse that people put an escape room prop through. But that's why I've been showing you this one the entire time. This is a reproduction. This is a fake wax cylinder that we created using some painting techniques and some sanding techniques and a few other things. It's made out of ABS pipe that you can just get from a Home Depot store or something like that. And we're going to show you how we made this and what we're doing with it, because this might be something that could come in handy for you to know down the line. The first thing we do is cut a piece of ABS pipe to size for what we need, and then using a little jig I made on my belt sander, I'm able to round the corners and give it that very distinct wax cylinder beveled edge that if you've ever seen one, you'll notice that it has. So at least if you've seen a picture of one, you have a vague recollection of the shape and size of what it looks like. The next thing is to clean up the edges and lightly sand the pipe because it needs to accept spray paint. So we spray paint it with a glossy finish because if you'll notice on an actual wax cylinder, the edges are shiny, but the middle is not. So I wanted to make sure that we really captured that detail because it was important to us. We then tape it off using strips of masking tape and painter's tape, and then we hit it with a coating of matte spray paint. So now you have that matte, ribbed kind of look in the center and the glossy edges. The final step is to take kind of a coarse rag or piece of cloth and just turn it in my hands to give the center kind of a roughed up look, like there could be grooves on it. There's no reason to make really deep grooves into it because, again, people aren't so familiar with these that they'll be able to look at it and go, this isn't a real wax cylinder. So we just need it to look enough like one that it works in the room that we're using it for. So after all that, this is what we end up with here. You can see that it looks a lot like a wax cylinder if you looked one up online. Now, the issue is we need to get it to play, right? This needs to be able to play in a player. And so real wax cylinders have holes in the center of them, but we can't do that really and have these play the audio. We need them to play. So the solution to that is to 3D print caps. These are just some black caps that have been printed on my 3D printer. And then I take RFID tags and glue them into place right here. So these are RFID tags that have been just glued down, and these fit right inside of here like that. And those get glued into place like this. So that way, no matter which direction these go into the phonograph player, they will fit and play exactly how we need them to. And each cylinder we have made plays different audio depending on which tag goes inside. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like right now. This is our gramophone. Now, we did not make this because it already existed. We tend not to make things from scratch unless it's absolutely necessary. This was actually used as a radio and tape player when it was purchased. So now we're gonna seal this up so nobody knows there's anything in here, and we've modified this quite a bit actually. We've taken a lot of pieces off. There was a crank, it was a real gramophone you had to crank to make it work. Don't need that, that's not necessary, so we got rid of that. And we added this housing here. This piece here was not originally on here because normally a wax cylinder has a piece that you slide over that this goes onto like this and it turns, right? But because of the way these work, we needed something, a housing that this would slide into like this, something people would understand and be able to operate pretty easily. And so we 3D modeled these pieces here and made it where a RFID antenna can hide inside of it at this end here. And if I spin this around, you can see inside of it, there is an Arduino chilling out back here. There is a DF player right there. And as I said, the RFID antenna up here. And the nice thing is because this was a radio, I was able to wire the original speaker to the DF player, which makes it nice and loud. I don't have to worry about getting a speaker that is or isn't powerful enough. And that's pretty much it. Like, it wasn't, obviously the programming is the hardest part, is getting it to do what we want, but I'll plug it in and you can see kind of how it works. So depending on which wax cylinder is slid inside here, that determines what plays, right? And so right now I just have a test audio programmed to these two chips. Here, this is not what it's going to sound like. This is just something we could test with.
This is Dr. Frankenstein testing my new gramophone.
And it doesn't matter which way I put it in. I can put it in here or here. It'll play no matter what.
This is Dr. Frankenstein.
And it'll stop when I pull it out, which was very important, right? We didn't want it to loop. We didn't want it to, when you pull it out, the audio keeps playing, because obviously that's not realistic. We didn't want people to be pulled out of the immersion of the room because they're like, well, wait, why is it still playing if I'm still holding it? And that's pretty much it. Like, this is, players will find these as they progress through the room, and this is what delivers kind of clues as to what to do next with the items they find with the wax cylinders. And we're very excited to see how people react to this and how they interact with it. It's going to be very interesting, and it's a pretty unique thing. I haven't seen something like this in a room, but hey, I haven't played every room that's out there. So that's how we made our own fake wax cylinders. Hopefully you learned something today, not just about wax cylinders, but also about yourself as well. If you have any questions or comments or decide to make some of these yourself, hit us up at testsubjects.com and let us know. And of course, if you're here, you might as well subscribe and do all that other weird algorithm-y stuff so you don't miss any of these other cool videos that we make. We do tutorials, we do do-it-yourself stuff, and a little bit of other just random things in between. So hopefully we'll see you guys next time, and enjoy.